What's up YouTube, and welcome to a new buying guide. If this is your first time to the channel, this channel is all about depreciation analysis and, you guessed it, buying guides. And what makes this channel quite unique, at least I like to think so, is that we focus on depreciation numbers, forecasted values, and on the cars which offer the best deals in the market, but all for today's market. So that means that everything what you're seeing on the channel is based on real-time data analytics and therefore is super relevant if you're looking to purchase the car which is being treated in the analysis. And as you probably guessed from the title, today we are having a look to the BMW i8. So let's go! Now, even though that there are only 1,800 i8s sold to the US, it turns out that the car is quite popular. This analysis was namely requested by AcneTubes, but also by Aaron Adams. And that of course also means that you can request an analysis simply by commenting the name of the car down in the comment section. Also make sure then that you subscribe and click the notification bell so you get actually notified when your requested analysis goes live. We will however continue now with the i8, and we first take a broad market perspective and then we slowly zoom in until we find an individual car which offers a good deal in today's market. And that means that we first start with the market exploration shown in the histograms over here. In the top you can see the price distribution for the full market, and this is split in a few categories. We will then also start with the histogram showing the full market at the top and then work our way down to the bottom. You can see that there are 266 i8s put up for sale in today's market and that they have an average price point of $89,000. Prices start at around $55,000 and stretch on up till $175,000. And this is an insanely large price range, and you can then also see that the price distribution for the market looks a bit strange. Between $90,000 and $160,000 there are namely almost no cars for sale, while at the other ends of the distribution there are a lot of cars offered for sale. And if we move then the histogram down, then we can see exactly why this is the case. Here you can namely see the price distribution but then split by the used cars sold by dealers, and the new cars. And you can see very well now why the price distribution for the full market looked so strange. The large difference was namely caused by the huge difference between the new and the used cars. And this of course already says something about the depreciation what you can expect on a new i8, but more about that later. If we move on then to the histogram at the bottom, then we can see the split between the Spider and the Coupe. And quite surprisingly, there are only 5 Coupes which are offered for sale versus 261 Spiders. If anyone knows why there are so few Coupes for sale, please let me know down in the comments. Now we know a little bit how the market looks for the i8 and what the different price points are, and that means it's time to have a look to the depreciation per year. And that is exactly what is shown in the graph over here, where we have now model year on the horizontal axis and price on the vertical axis. Each of the bubbles which you see represent an i8 for sale in today's market, and the blue solid line going through the graph shows the depreciation curve. And you can already see that this doesn't look very pretty. The average depreciation for a BMW i8 is namely, and here it comes, $23,414 per year. And this of course sounds very bad, but there's also some good news. You can see namely from the shape of the depreciation curve that it depends very much on how old the car is, how much it will depreciate. And as you can see from the graph, almost all of the depreciation is taken in the first 2 years of ownership. In these 2 years, the car is namely losing $80,000 of its value, equaling about half of its original purchasing price. It is then also after those 2 years that you can see very clearly that the depreciation curve is flattening out. You can even see that the depreciation curve is starting to turn slightly upwards towards the end, and this is caused by the average price point of the cars in model year 2014. This average price point is namely about $2,000 higher than the average price point of the cars from model year 2015, but this is caused by the fact that the cars in model year 2014 actually have less mileage than the ones in 2015. So please don't put too much emphasis on the part of the depreciation curve which is actually increasing, as this is due to the lower mileage of those cars. On a general level, however, I think it is quite fair to say that the depreciation for the older cars bottomed out. But what does this mean then for the forecasted values? Let's have a look to that. And to do that I created the graph over here, and let me put that also on the big screen. You can see that we have now only the older model years and that the depreciation curve is forecasted 1 year into the future. Also, you can see that there's a shaded area surrounding the depreciation curve, and this shaded area represents the forecasted value range. And if we zoom in a little bit on that range, we can see that there's a 95% chance that the average price point from a car of model year 2014 will lay between $59,000 and $67,500 1 year from now. And if you paid close attention to the graph, then you can actually see that these numbers are in line with the average price point of cars from model year 2015 and model year 2016. So in the foreseeable future, I don't see any large price drops happening in the i8 market. Now then, we have quite a good understanding of how model year affects the price of an i8, but we also all know that there are more things than model year which can affect the price. And one of these things which is of key importance is of course the mileage. And therefore we are also going to have a look to the depreciation per 1000 miles driven in this graph over here. You can see that instead of model year, we have now miles on the horizontal axis, and price is still on the vertical axis. And if I put this graph on the big screen so you can see what's going on, then you can see that the average depreciation per 1000 miles driven is $2,163. And bear in mind that just as with the depreciation per year, this is an average number, so it doesn't tell the full story. And to illustrate this, I also use a straight depreciation line over here, which represents the $2,163 depreciation per 1000 miles. And if we have a closer look to this line, then you can see of course that the cars which are newer, so have less miles driven, of course depreciate a lot higher than the average, whereas the cars which are older and have more miles driven depreciate a lot less than the average. And to illustrate exactly this, I created this graph over here. And this graph is exactly the same as you saw before, but the bubbles are now colored according to what car type it is. In blue we have now the used ones, in orange we have the used ones sold by a dealer, and in green we have the new cars. And if we now have a look to the depreciation per 1000 miles driven, but only for the used cars, then we can see that this number is reduced to $890 per 1000 miles. Alright, you are now up to date on all of the market statistics for the i8, but let's talk business. What would be a fair purchasing price for an i8, and which individual car in today's market might offer a good deal? Those two things are exactly what we are going to find out now. And we start with the fair purchasing prices. And to figure out what a fair purchasing price is, we of course need to consider two of the most important things which affect the price, and we know by now that this is the model year and the mileage. I therefore inputted these factors to a machine learning algorithm which determines for us if a car is following the normal market dynamics or not. And if a car follows the normal market dynamics, one can assume that the car is priced fairly. If a car, however, doesn't follow the normal market dynamics, then you can assume that it's either over or underpriced. And the result of that analysis you can see in the 3D plot over here, where we have indeed now model year, mileage and price. You can also see that the cars are again represented by a bubble and that the bubbles have now colors. And if a bubble has a green color, it means in this case that the car is following the normal market dynamics. This does then also mean that the bubbles with a white color don't follow the normal market dynamics. They are either priced over the market or under the market. And if we first have a look to the cars which tend to follow the normal market dynamics, then we can see that these range from model year 2014 to model year 2017. If we rotate the graph then a little bit, then we can also see that these cars have a price point of between $60,000 and $80,000. And if we rotate the graph again then a little bit, then we can also see that these cars tend to have a mileage of less than 60,000 miles. So we know then what price range and what mileage range we need to search in, but these ranges are of course still very large. We can however narrow those ranges by doing a relative value analysis. And this will allow us to pick a few individual cars which offer a good deal in the market. And to do that we will have a look to the last graph before we conclude, and that is this one over here. This car is namely showing us the model year on the horizontal axis, but also the mileage by the size of the bubbles. So that of course means that the larger the size of a bubble, the more mileage that particular car has driven. And in this graph, you would expect to see two things. First, you are expecting to see that each model year, the average price point lowers a bit. This would namely reflect the effect of model year on price. Second, you would expect that within each model year, the cars which have the lowest mileage are priced the highest, and the cars which have a higher mileage are of course priced lower. And this of course would represent then the effect of mileage on price. So how do you find then a car which offers good value for money? Let me show you. First, we're going to narrow this graph down so that it shows only the cars which fall within the fair purchasing price range. And remember that this was between $60,000 and $80,000 and cars which have less than 60,000 miles. Second then, you want to find a small bubble, which is most likely surrounded by large bubbles, lower in the price range. This would namely represent that the car from the same model year is priced under the average for that model year, but also has an under average mileage. And hence, these cars offer good buying opportunities. And if you inspect this graph very detailed, then you can actually find a few of these opportunities. There's however one which especially caught my eye, and that is this one over here. This is a car from model year 2016 with 1,127 miles driven and a price point of $59,900. And for those of you interested, this particular car is for sale at Land Rover Buckhead in Atlanta. I also need to give you a small disclaimer here. I don't know this car, I just had a look to the price, mileage, model year combinations, and based on those metrics, this seems to be a good deal. You of course still need to do your own research and make sure that nothing's wrong with the car and that the car is up to your standard. I would therefore then also not recommend to make your purchasing decision purely on this. Oh, and small disclaimer too, this video is also not sponsored by Land Rover Buckhead. And after those two notes, it is time to conclude on this buying and depreciation analysis. So then, the BMW i8. We saw that the depreciation on this car is huge. In fact, when you have a look to the relative depreciation per year, then the i8 is very close to the Jaguar F-Type R, which we saw last week was one of the highest depreciating car ever featured on this channel. Personally, I would then also not go for a new car, but rather I would find a nice second-hand i8. The depreciation curve bottomed out namely quite nicely, and also the forecasted value range showed us that the depreciation you can expect in a time horizon of 1 year should be fairly limited. A used i8 has however quite some competition at this price point. You could for example also purchase a Z06, an F-Type R, a Ferrari 360 or even an Audi R8 V8. And with those cars, although they are a bit older, you arguably get a little bit more car for the money. The running cost on those cars however will be a lot higher than the running cost for a BMW i8. And therefore, if you're searching for a relatively modern sports car, which you can also use every day and has low running costs, the BMW i8 might be your answer. And with that conclusion we arrive at the end of this video. Now if you enjoyed this video and it helped you to make a purchasing decision, please smash that like button as it really helps to support the channel. Also make sure that you check some of my other videos, as all of the cars which I named in this video have their own buying and depreciation guide on my channel.